Alrighty, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hajim Zero here, back with another movie review. This one is kind of one of my favorite war films. You know, even though I don't like war, but I do like film. This and Full Metal Jacket. This is Apocalypse Now, and is directed by Francis Ford Coppola. And this movie has a lot of stars in it. Martin Sheen, um, Harrison Ford, Marlon Brando, a very young Laurence Fishburne. Like when I first saw it, I didn't even know he was in this. Even though I did see The Matrix and behind the scenes, and Lawrence said he was on this movie. It was you know the second longest, or the second movie he's been in that took forever. He's in it. Dennis Hopper's in it. Robert Duvall. Uh, and I know that there's some more notable actors. The guy, the gentleman that played the Muslim that converted Malcolm X, um, he's in this too. Well, in the movie Malcolm X with Denzel Washington, the guy that the first Muslim he talked to, he's in this movie as well. And Arlie Ermey has a brief cameo in this. I think this had got him a little bit more prepped before he did Full Metal Jacket, but of course Arlie Ermey was actually in Vietnam, and he was, he has military experience. I guess morally to get him ready for film. But this movie's pretty much, it follows Charlie Sheen's character. He's assigned with bringing back a renegade soldier living amongst the Viet Cong uh, within Vietnam and Cambodia, and pretty much it shows the real horrors of war. War is hell, and I'm very vague about it because I have seen the movie multiple times, but it did slip my mind if Charlie Sheen's character joined him or not. I think I only seen the ending once. Usually, when I have a good memory about these movies, I see it multiple times, but I only think I saw the ending once. And pretty much he's tasked to go after the renegade soldier that pretty much, is converted over to the communist or Viet Cong ways, and he ends up being converted himself. At least I think that was open to interpretation. But again, you guys can tell me in the comment box. I'll eventually will watch it again. It's just I don't know how long now or when the time comes. But this movie is very long. They have multiple different cuts of the film. A lot of stuff was cut out of the film, I think originally, and when they remastered and put it on different formats, they added more stuff, and it's just it. Hearing about how much hell it was for Francis Ford Coppola to do this movie, and then have a lot of stuff be cut, and all this is very understandable. A lot of his sets were destroyed. You're shooting out there in Southeast Asia, and you get these monsoons and stuff that destroyed his sets. What was it? Some of the scenes, some of the actors I know had got hurt. I know he lost a lot of pounds. I think Martin Sheen was drunk in one of the scenes he did for his birthday. Laurence was underage. He had lied about his age. Trying to remember. Oh, and also Dennis Hopper had got him on drugs too, even though they never shared any scenes together in the movie. I think by the time they meet his character, Laurence Fishburne's character already died. And in the beginning, what I said, how I really don't like war, especially with Vietnam, that was a big thing back in the 60s and 70s. And of course, me reviewing Full Metal Jacket. As you look at both movies, they're similar, but they're also different as what the story narrative tells. Uh, One deals with, of course, the training and the psychological effect. And then the other part, of course, is the war itself, and how the main character had a dual identity. This one, it pretty much went. If Full Metal Jacket was a funny, ironic thing I said before, the origin of the Joker, this looks like an origin for Bane, especially what happens with with Marlon Brando's character. And another good parallel I will say about this film, even though I hope to God they don't do this, if they were to remake this movie, we all know what the equivalent of what war would be, and it would be the war right now in the Middle East or in the past. It's I don't. I hear different shit every day saying the war is over, or the war's still going on. And it was funny because I was listening to a whatchamacallit, this is vaguely what I'm vaguely paraphrasing, but it was a feminist who was talking about the tropes in movies, and I think it had something to do with the Middle Easterns and people of Middle Eastern descent, and Iron Man was on there, because in that movie that's what it was. But I was like, number one, it's more modern. Got Yeah, for all we know, if it was the original story where he was in Vietnam, and if you read the comic, that was the original story. He was in, and he was captured by the Viet Cong, and he was in that cave building the Iron Man suit, but it was appropriate at the time. And if Marvel had came to me and saying, write your own, story and universe with our characters in it, I would have taken it back to that age. And like I said, that would have been a controversy today because, the whole Muslim ban and the Taliban, and anything dealing with the Middle East, we have our own perspective of it. And it's also over there. Same thing with Full Metal Jacket. If that was being remade, you could say Jarhead was that film, but I really don't know if they had the training sequence in there as a Marine. Hell, I bet on an audio commentary, that's what one of the filmmakers will probably say. It was a heavy inspiration off of Full Metal Jacket, but it wasn't a remake. It was a telling of our own story. But I would 110% bet if they came out with a movie like this and I sat there and watched it, I would have said it back in my mind. This would have been Apocalypse Now because, they have stories of some Americans and some Russians, people who aren't of the Arabic world, who convert and become part of ISIS and these other, Muslim extremists, groups, and they live their life out there literally, and it just sucks. War really sucks, especially when your government is feeding you one thing and you don't know the bigger picture. Is to dissuade you from not killing everyone or you obeying every single command. Yeah, even with World War II, with the Pacific Fleet, a lot of people, I think in my generation, a few others really don't know why we had fought. Of course, or well, let me put it like this: what a lot of people don't know is that America didn't enter the war of World War II until Pearl Harbor was bombed. I remember my teacher was saying, while all that killing was going on in the First World War, the rest of the world really does nothing. Yeah, over in the United Kingdom, and of course in America, we didn't do anything until that bombing happened. And I think until the Nazis had kind of pushed over and invaded a little bit of more of Europe, especially in around in I think in the Polish and United, almost to the United Kingdom area, or it was getting to that direction. That's when the British decided to fight back, ally with the Americans, and do that. Indirectly, the same thing with the Japanese. The Chinese were our ally because they invaded over there and they were pushing over the territory. That was one of the reasons why they had bombed Pearl Harbor. They were pushing their territory. And another thing a lot of people don't know, and they were even tripping over Obama about apologizing for bombing Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Come to find out, when they bombed, Pearl Harbor, they only bombed the military artillery. They never attacked any hospitals or all that other stuff, that didn't have any weapons, despite of what Hollywood might tell you. And to me that's fair because when we bombed them, we killed men, women, and children. Like America was that pissed. And again, it's understandable. You don't do a sneak attack and expect us not to do anything. But let me get back to the movie in Vietnam. Um, a lot of people in that time, pretty much, if you say to them now, it's not a real war or it was terrible. A few of the veterans and people who lived in that time, some of them will say it is. Others will be pissed because they feel like they've given their body and their sanity, to this country, and just for someone to tell them it wasn't shit. And to be honest, it wasn't. And a lot of them were young who had their lives jacked up. And even now, when they were talking about the whole draft and all that, there's some things I might personally do because I'm not fighting in a war, especially if I don't know a really good reason to. Right after World War II, most of these wars have been about politics or money. At least with World War II, if that was a fight for survival, if we didn't win, pretty much that German superpower, like out of a comic book, was gonna be real. Hitler was that crazy, and it's just the way it is. It's something worth fighting for, and it blows because Bush at the time with the Middle East, he was putting out propaganda and rhetoric, and it was distracting America from everything else. And I believe even back then they did the same thing. They were trying to give a reason of why we should invade and get all over their politics. I got to really look into the reason, but eventually we had backed out. So many of our people were being killed, and it makes sense. You're invading a country that you have nothing about. You're fighting on their terrain, and not only the Vietnamese, they knew how to live off the land. They knew how to kill you in multiple ways. Yeah, so that's something I don't want to fuck with. But the way that this movie was shot and everything, the next comic book piece that I was working, I'm jumping back and forth, but I'm gonna get back to the first five chapters. The influence was this movie, and it was Full Metal Jacket as well. It was a few other inspirations, and also me talking to people who lived at the time who were either in the war or if they were spectating. Um, and again, it is, I don't like to see, young people, even of my generation or even younger, get killed for no fucking reason, unless it's something worth fighting for. And it sucks because with our wars over misunderstanding, especially recently, how, our leaders in office, they're fidgeting or they want to start some shit with another country. Well, one guy in particular, I know Trump really didn't want to, um, but it's been a while. But one of that guy with the weird looking mustache, the grandpa mustache, I like to call it. He was itching, to start some shit. But that's pretty much what I have to say about the movie. It is a very long movie. The original cut, I really don't know. I think I'm only paraphrasing. I want to say they had cut out like 15 to 30 minutes of footage, but it's in this film. It's when they make an additional stop. I want to say this movie is 3 hours long. I really can't remember, or it could be 2 hours and 30 minutes. Again, various different cuts and versions will tell you something different, but that's pretty much all I have to talk about. Again, if you want to talk about in the comments, we can talk about it, have a discussion, things that I was right on, things I was wrong. But other than that, I will talk to you later. Peace out.